3 passwords. So people can hear me? Okay, hello everybody. Hello here in Nairobi, welcome. Hello online, everywhere in the world. Good morning, good afternoon. Very nice to meet all of you. So altogether we are around 50 people. I think that's a good number of participants for this important topic on social protection. We are here at the Civil Society Conference of the United Nations, which is basically for the preparation of the Summit of the Future. So we had the opening this morning, and now we have several workshops, I think 32 workshops, and we thought it's important to have a workshop on social protection to bring this topic into the Summit of the Future, the Pact for the Future. So the title of the workshop is Why Universal Social Protection is Essential for Inclusive Development, Peace and Security in the Present and in the Future. So we want to think and discuss together. This is actually organized by a group of different organizations. First of all, big thank you to Save the Children for organizing this room and the whole logistics and also for coordinating. So thank you very much. Maybe one clap. We are in the Global Coalition for Social Protection Clause. This is a second co-organizer, then UNANIMA International, then the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, International Presentation Association, and the Building Blocks for Peace Foundation. And I'm from the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, GCAP. My name is Ingo. I'm the director of GCAP, and I'm happy to be here. Social protection is, of course, one of the key instruments to fight poverty and inequality. Unfortunately, it is not yet very strong in the Pact for the Future, the main outcome document of the Summit of the Future. So this is one of the key topics here, how we can bring this into the CSO conference and maybe into the further development of the Pact for the Future. But we also have a wider perspective. In September 2025, next year will be the World Social Summit, or World Summit for Social Development. Probably it will take place in New York. The preparations are just starting. And there, of course, social protection will be a central part. Just to say a few words, many of you are probably aware that more than half of the world's population don't have any access to social protection, more than 4 billion people. Especially in Africa, more than 83%. That means, almost all of the population don't have access to social protection, and therefore it's very good that there are initiatives that the African Union actually agreed on the African Protocol for Social Protection. We will hear about that later from our colleague from the African Platform for Social Protection. So as the Global Coalition for Social Protection Clause, we are demanding for a global fund for social protection to support especially low-income countries. It is definitely important that and essential that the demand for social protection in the policies are developed at national level. So therefore, we will start also with a perspective from Kenya, from the country we are in. I will introduce Jane Anyango a little later. So, of course, there are other processes going on, like the Global Accelerator for Jobs and Social Protection for Just Transformation, which is also in the similar line. But as I said, in the zero draft of the Pact for the Future. There is only one mention of social protection, and that is underuse. That's good, it's there, but definitely I'm really surprised that it even was not mentioned in the sustainable development part. So the chapter social sustainable development and financing for development is the first part, and this shows already this connection. We will have our colleague from the ILO also on the financing, and of course there's a very important part of child poverty. And there are different dimensions, but child poverty is definitely one of the key perspectives. So we will hear about all of these dimensions today. I will introduce the speakers before they speak. But we also want to hear them and think together how we can really bring social protection into the CSO conference afterwards, because after these workshops, there will be 2 plenaries. And there, this is an opportunity to raise the voice for these topics. We will start with Jane Anyango. She's the founder of the Polycom Development Project here from Kibera in Nairobi. So Kibera is the biggest urban slum in Africa, and she did great work, especially with young girls and women. We have been there yesterday in the People's Assembly, and it was really very impressive to see the young people, young women, young men also coming together and discussing and formulating their demands. So we are actually working together, as Jane is also the coordinator of GCAP Kenya, and therefore I'm following her work. I'm really happy that you're here. Yeah, Jane will introduce about the situation of social protection in Kenya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon once again. Jambo. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be part of this conversation right now as a Kenyan, as a woman from the informal settlement, especially now that we are dealing with a situation when the need for social protection has presented itself in the name of floods that we just witnessed. People are not aware, not even the government is aware of the real situation in our community. And I'm happy that I'm here to bring practical examples of what is going on in our communities and what I feel should be done. I'm talking about the woman who has no access to social protection in any way, cannot access the transfers, cash transfers that we are talking about. She's scared to take the loans, the affirmative action loans that we have, because she's not sure of her business. She's not sure if she's going to have the business tomorrow. So anything can happen. It's about what you get on that day. You feed from what you get on that day. So if you have nothing tomorrow, it means that your business, if you don't go to sell tomorrow, it means that your business will go down. So this woman must pay for the National Hospital Insurance Fund for her to access the basic health services, just the basic, and only inpatient. The normal one she's not able to access, because the only one we have is supposed to be for the civil servants. I'm talking about the woman who is in Kenya, where we are talking about free primary education, when we have to buy uniforms, we have to buy books, we have to pay for remedials, we have to pay for all things. Meaning, the kids are going to school and they're not sure whether they're going to go to high school or not. I'm talking about this girl from the slums who is not sure where she's going to get her pads. Because yes, our government is talking about provision of pads, but they bring it maybe once in a year. Periods comes every month, whether you like it or not, they come. So I know we have beautiful ideas in this country. And I know on paper, Kenyans talk, and we think we are really far as a country. But it's unfortunate, in the slums, we still pay for toilets. We buy water. Some of us who are working in the informal setting, we are not sure what we're going to do after we retire. And that is why most people in the civil society world, people working in the civil society world and have retired, are living in abject poverty. I'm sure my daughter would like to live my life, despite the fact that I've served for more than 20 years. When floods came, I know Mathare was badly affected, one of our slum settlements. Then everybody forgot about everyone. What is happening in the community today, it's not about the floods. We have water coming down. So houses are flooded, people are walking with gumboots in the houses. They're very cold, but they cannot take their kids to the hospitals because our doctors are on what? Kenyans? That's right. We are on strike, yeah? Mm-hmm. But the private hospitals are working. Is that true? Yes. So where are we? Are we stopping sicknesses? Especially when we are dealing with the water that you wake up in the morning. People have to squeeze themselves on that small bed because people can no longer sleep on the floor. And these are realities. Women, especially people from the slums, we are forced to be caregivers, whether we like it or not. Because if you don't take care of your neighbor, if you don't take care of people within your house, then it means that you're not going to sleep. When the neighbor's child is crying, then everyone is awake in your house because you share almost everything. We are talking about access to affordable housing. It's not realistic within our context because we cannot pay for the deposits that are expected. So within the communities, people have come up with their own way, their own community social protection programs. Since I got to Kibera almost 30 years ago, we have something we call Chama. It came from the community. Kenyans know about Chama, the merry-go-round thing. And we came up with this because you cannot save enough. You cannot have enough to pay for your rent, to pay for your children's school fees, pay for what? Somehow it was hijacked by our banks, all the banks you find in the slums. So they give the small loans, but we have to pay with what? Somewhat, profit interest. And if you don't pay with interest, they do what? They auction you. So you may go back poorer than you were before. And with that, people are what? Scared. People have come up with their own chamas to put money together for children to go to school. People have come up with different ideas to be able to survive, but they're not harmonized with the government programs. In Kenya, we have education scholarships. The governor has scholarship, the member of parliament has scholarship, the woman rep has scholarship, the MCA has scholarship. But are they coordinated? Do we know if it's the same person getting from the governor, getting from whom, getting from whom? If you don't have your connections, and you're this poor woman who wakes up in the morning and comes back late at night trying to get food for their families, then you know when. So poverty in this country is tough. And if we are not keen, if we don't devolve our systems, if we don't work with the local systems in the community to know who is where within the communities, then we are not moving. There's need for social protection. There is need for people to be peaceful as they do their usual work, to know that at least my tomorrow is guaranteed. We have no that. But I love Kenyans because we have that serious hope. I love people in the community. Yes, it's one day at a time, but we smile and live. So what I can say as we are talking here, as we're walking into the summit for the future, as we're talking about the sustainable development goals, let us go practical. Let us not be too high. You know, when you come into the community to have your research, then it depends on your questionnaire. It depends on what you're looking for. At times you come into the community, the people present what you're looking for. They give you what you're looking for because that is how we are cultured. Let's work with organized groups within the communities. People come up naturally to solve problems in their communities. I was talking to my sister over lunchtime and she was telling me about the solutions, about those beautiful ideas out there. The truth is they're good, yes, but if they don't have feet to touch the ground, to touch on people's lives, then, you know, they don't mean much. So let's put our heads together and invest in the care economy. Let's work closely with the people in the community. People are so empowered. As women, we celebrate where we are coming from. Imagine I'm truly from Kibera. I was a mother in Kibera at 18. But here I am, this is a global platform, and I've gone to further global platforms, meaning something has changed. So let's work meaningfully with the people in the community. Let's have real social protection for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I think it's very impressive to listen to your background, your experience, and sorry. Okay, and also, yeah, really important to mention the floods. We have talked to people yesterday, and like one woman, for example, who lost her house. Also, other people lost their lives, and that's of course one dimension also of social protection to support people in these situations. We are coming now to the topic of child poverty or social protection for children. Only 1 of 10 children in low-income countries has actually access to social protection, which is extremely low. And I'm happy we are here with Save the Children, working on this topic, and that we have, now I have to look for the name, David Lambert, Tumwesigye, who is a global advocacy and policy lead for child poverty of Save the Children. David has worked with and supported several organizations, for example, with the Ugandan social protection program, with also World Food Program, if I understand it right. Also, if you advised Irish Aid, the World Bank. So there's a lot of background. Yeah, happy to hear about the child benefit tracker, especially. Please, David.
Thank you, Ingo, and thank you everybody for being here today. We really appreciate that you made the time to be here. Thank you very much for our online participants. I think Jane has painted a very vivid picture of what it means to live in poverty, because often when you read the National Household Survey report, it doesn't really tell you what that means. You know, you hear 30% of the population lives below the poverty line, and often understating the numbers, because most of these poverty numbers are political figures, and so governments try to keep them as mute as possible. So thank you very much, Jane, for explaining in very simple terms what it means to live in poverty. The point of my presentation today is to share with you all one of the tools we've developed together with the ILO and UNICEF over the past 2 years, and we want to use this tool to help everybody to understand the scale of child poverty, but most importantly, to show what is possible when governments make a commitment to build inclusive social protection systems. And one of the greatest examples we saw was during COVID, where 30% of the relief for COVID was through social protection systems. And one of the greatest lessons from that terrible time was that the countries that had set up and established robust and inclusive social protection systems found it much easier to scale up support where it was needed. In my country, in the backyard in Uganda, we struggled to deliver food to families, including trying to use the political system to deliver relief. What we know now is that if across the world we had universal child benefit systems in place, more than 3/4 of all households would have been reached in a very short time and delivered the support that was needed. And this is exactly the system we need to deal with the impact and terrible consequences of the climate crisis, which every day we see before our eyes. I think Jen described in a very sarcastic way how people can no longer sleep on the floor because it's flooding. Now they have to share a bed. For a moment, think about what that means. The floor was once a privilege. Now with flooding, it's not. And so really a pleasure for me to share my experiences, but also the experiences of other great colleagues from UNICEF and the ILO and Save the Children to build this tracker that's designed to track every child's right to social protection. My colleague will share the link to the tracker in the chat, so if you haven't seen the tracker, you'll be able to see that. Most of this work is informed by some work that we've done over the years, both in partnership with others and ourselves. So 3 main reports. In Save the Children, we have this flagship report on the extreme left, the Foundation to End Child Poverty, which talks about how universal child benefits can help us to build a fairer, more inclusive and resilient future. We also have another report, Born into the Climate Crisis, basically, which rings the siren on why we must act now to secure children's rights. They basically have partnered with a university to conduct analysis of the impact of climate going forward. And of course, on the right, this report, which also outlines the urgent need for universal protection for children. That's a report by the ILO and UNICEF. What are we trying to solve with the child benefits tracker? Some people may not know that all children have a right to basic income security, and this is actually articulated in the United Nations Convention on the Right of Children of the Child, Article 26. It's very clear. So it's not because we don't have the legal foundation or the norms for that. We know that in the SDG, the Sustainable Development Agenda, we've committed to end extreme poverty and have extreme poverty. Eradicate extreme poverty and half the normal poverty by 2030, including child poverty. We also know through all the evidence that's being generated, because actually cash is one of the most evidenced development tools in recent times. We know it's an effective and cost-effective tool for reducing child poverty and supporting families to invest in children, because children are an investment. In the first 1,000 days, if you don't invest in your children, train has left. But especially in our part of the world, we look at these statistics. Oh, you know, in Uganda, we're reducing stunting. Over the past 10 years, it's been at 30%. Now it's 26%. We're making progress. 30% of of our future workforce is stunted. It means even if we invest in education, they will never achieve their full potential. And we're living in a world of AI, and the situation is being exacerbated by the climate crisis. So you can imagine how urgent it is to build systems that enable families to invest in their children. And sadly, public investment is very low. Only 1 in 2 children, less than 1 in 10 children in low-income countries have access to social protection benefits. And I think most people have talked about how much poverty there is in the world. 1 in 2 children live in multidimensional poverty globally. I want to skip this slide, but very quickly summarize that when you provide households with cash, you enable them to invest in their children's survival first and foremost. So it's good for nutrition, but it also enables children to go to and stay in school. And that's important for what they become in the future. There is a lot of research about the impacts of child poverty on future earnings. If you read something that I think it's in the 2015 World Development Report, it's actually daunting to know how much we lose by not investing in children. And so through the child benefits tracker, we're trying to shine a light on this challenge of child poverty, so everybody knows how bad it is, but most importantly, to inspire progress, because we know that there are countries that have made so much progress in investing in children. We know that the system works. So this is a tool to inspire people like us in the room to challenge our governments and foreign partners to invest in universal and inclusive social protection systems. And so this is a tool for policymakers, academics, civil society organizations, and campaigners to advocate. It's a tool we can use to monitor how much progress we are making towards that goal we made to end child poverty, including the goal to establish universal social protection flows by 2030. And using that information to have a very progressive dialogue. And so as we look towards the Summit of the Future and the Pact, this is a tool we can reach out to on our smartphones and tell the story we want to tell and share the evidence we want to share. So I'll very quickly take us in 5 minutes just to show you a snapshot of the child benefits tracker. And after that, I will ask you to go visit that tracker. And if you see any gaps in your individual country, in your region, let us know. There is a form on the tracker so that we can improve it. It's our tool for dialogue. You can have information in your specific country page. And welcome our child campaigners, I believe you are. Yes, you found me going to talk about one of the components of the child benefits tracker, which you can use to campaign. You can find information about your country, the levels of child poverty there, how much governments are investing, and what this money can do. So I will go now to the website.
You get the title of the website?
Yes, I think we already are in the tracker. I need to stop sharing this and share the tracker page. So this is the page. If I just very quickly go through, we've got the main landing page, and that's what I will focus on, but you can actually go to this tracker and enter your country, and you can see the levels of child poverty in that country and how much investments governments are making, your government is making. For child campaigners, if you look on the screen, So Albania is the first country on that list. But if you lived in Albania, you would see that children there have a 25% chance of being eligible for help from the government. It's called a child benefit or family benefit, and it helps families to with the expenses of raising children. So this page is dedicated for child campaigners in very simple language. They can see the levels of child poverty in that specific country and compare it to the region. So the blue here is the Eastern European Central average. So this is the page for Albania. The one in orange, that's the numbers for Albania. I will not spend so much time, but there is also information about the levels of monetary and multidimensional child poverty there, including the sources of that data. Details of what the information is, where the information is coming from are in the methodology page. I want to focus now finally on the community page, which is the page that captures conversations such as this, the insights from conversations such as this, and puts them out there for child campaigners, for advocates, for academics and policymakers to make informed decisions. So if you visit this page in a couple of days, we will have recording of this event and all the great insights that have been shared. And basically, you'll find that most of these posts are tagged. So if you want to hear about UCBs, you click on whatever you want. So feel free to go there and navigate through this tracker. And what I want to ask of you is that because this is a community page, we want to host you. We want to host stories such as what Jane has shared so that everybody can know. In a word, the Child Benefits Tracker is that one-stop center you go to if you want to learn about social protection for children, if you want to know about levels of child poverty. And so if I go back to the home page, globally, you can see you can select a region that you want to focus on. If I choose, for example, Eastern and Southern Africa, the region will be highlighted, and if you click on any of the country, you will see how many children are covered. So, for example, Sudan, 81%, Kenya, 3.2% of children. And if you go down, there's a comparison of that to that region or globally. And if you go further, you'll see the levels of child poverty in that specific region. And you can also see a chart that shows the relationship between social protection investments and child poverty. And you can also see the different types of child benefits globally. So from this chart, you can see that there's no child benefits in Eastern and Southern Africa, 0. But globally 27, and if you click there, you'll see which countries they are. Most of them are in Europe. So we've got an uphill task to invest in universal social protection. So I will stop here and invite you to visit the tracker. Tell us what's missing. Share your stories with us. We'll be looking forward to having engagements with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. I opened the website. It's really very informative. So it's indeed, I think, the good thing of these events to learn what we are doing and how we can see how to work together. Another platform which is very much in this line is the African Platform for Social Protection. We have before I pronounce wrongly, Cyrilla, is that Heyi? She is program manager at the African Platform here. Yeah, so the African Platform has works basically all over Africa with national platforms in 27 countries. And we have worked last years together for several events. And I think They're doing really great work, and one special topic is the African platform. Is the African protocol for social protection. And Cyrilla will tell us about that. Yeah, please come in here.
Good afternoon, colleagues. How are you? Yes, I'm glad to be part of the team that is presenting this afternoon. And as I have already been introduced, I'll be talking about the AU protocol on social protection and social security. Yes, but before I do that, let me just project. It's not picking. Okay, before I do that, I would just like to tell you who we are. I know there are some of you who may not be aware about Africa Platform for Social Protection. Just briefly. Still not moving. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So my name is Cyrilla. So the Africa Platform for Social Protection is a network of CSOs operating at national and grassroots level with a commitment to promoting rights-based social protection in Africa. And as you have already heard, that we have 27 platforms in the 5 regions that are clearly stated: the Northern, Western, Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa. So we have representations in those areas. So in Africa, as you have already heard, about 17% of the population has any form of social protection cover. That leaves 83% of the population without social protection. What does that mean? Does it mean that we don't need social protection? Or does it mean that we can never fall into poverty? No, any one of us is a candidate of getting poverty. You can be rich today and tomorrow something happens, like the floods have happened, and then you will need social protection. So drawing lessons from COVID-19 in February 22, the heads of state adopted the African Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of citizens to social protection and social security. How many of us have heard about this protocol? How many of us have heard about this protocol? I can only see about 3 hands or about 5 hands who heard about the AU protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of citizens to social protection. So the protocol to social protection also aligns with the AU Agenda 2063 that envisions an integrated, prosperous, peaceful Africa. So the protocol has 39 articles. The protocol has 39 articles. and provides a detailed rights-based framework for member states on how to design and implement effective social protection systems that address key issues like social insurance, health care, informal and rural economy, women and girls, and it also addresses issues to do with unemployment and underemployment, cross-border migrants and internally displaced persons. It also talks about issues to do with families, older persons, children, adolescents and youth, persons with disabilities, among others. So the protocol basically has captured all the issues and the different categories of people that may be affected by poverty and vulnerability. So why the protocol on social protection? The protocol aspiration is that no human being on the continent of Africa lives below the minimum basic human standards. So it is important that all human beings in Africa are able to access the basic needs that human beings require, which may include shelter, food, and all that. So ratifying this protocol is thus crucial for fostering social justice, stability, and prosperity across Africa. So the ratification of this protocol has the potential to enable Africa to collaboratively address the social and economic challenges, which include improving access to essential services, reducing social disparities, and creating a more equitable and stable environment that ultimately contributes to the region's peace, security, and sustainable development. The question is that can Africa afford universal social protection schemes? What do you think? Do you think Africa, we can afford universal social protection schemes?
Yes.
Yes, we can. So the answer may be complex and will depend on context by context. However, with good fiscal discipline, it is very doable. We have funds, but now when it comes to fiscal discipline, we find that there's a challenge there. And then if we are also to restructure our current debt burden, it is also very possible for us to afford universal social protection. And good stewardship around the rich and diverse resources on the continent, and strengthening of governance to control corruption and wastage. If we are able to address what I have just mentioned, then we can actually afford universal social protection. Several African countries have made efforts to expand social protection programs in recent years, especially during the time for COVID. You saw what happened, and governments came up and provided cash transfers and provided other important utilities that were required by the citizens. And therefore, we actually need to expand social protection to include even the informal workers and even the rural economies. Unfortunately, huge loans borrowed mostly for infrastructure development on the continent is clawing back these gains. We are borrowing too much. And even after borrowing, we are not able to spend the money well. So what is the rallying call? The rally call for this protocol to come into force. A minimum of 15 member states are required to sign, ratify, and deposit the instrument of ratification to the chairperson of the Office of the African Union Commission. We only need a minimum of 15 countries to be able to sign the protocol and ratify and deposit the instruments with the AU Commission. But how many countries have so far done that since when the protocol was adopted by the AU heads of state? This protocol was adopted in 2022 February, but we are in 2024, and believe you me, only 2 countries, that is Niger and Sao Tome Principe, have signed the protocol, but they have not ratified the protocol yet. Yeah, so we acknowledge, we also recognize different efforts by AU, trade unions, and CSOs, faith actors, and others in mobilizing their governments to action. So those of you who are here representing maybe different countries, or you are from different CSOs or even faith-based organizations, it's important that we popularize the signing and the ratification of this AU protocol on social protection and social security. We have also received support for us to be able to popularize this protocol by our development partners. For example, Save the Children has funded us to be able to promote the ratification of the AU protocol on social protection and social security. So we are very grateful to Save the Children and other development partners who have supported this process. And we urge all of you here to be able to recognize and appreciate that the AU protocol to social protection and social security is very important for every citizen in the AU member states. So we need it signed and ratified as soon as possible. So we are urgently appealing to African citizens to encourage their governments. So it's your responsibility, even if you don't belong to a CSO, even if you're not a faith-based actor, as a citizen, now that you are aware about the AU protocol on social protection and social security, it is important for you to encourage your government to be able to sign and ratify the protocol. Examples on the continent show that ratified protocols supported with implementation, like the Umberto Protocol on women's rights, creates a momentum for change and transformation. The same would happen if the AU protocol is signed and ratified. It will bring a lot of change because everyone is a candidate who can qualify for social protection. And in fact, social protection is a right of each and every citizen of whichever country that you belong to. So it is very important for us to rally and just encourage our governments to sign and ratify this protocol on social protection and social security. As I conclude, I would like to say that let us all push for the ratification of the protocol by AU member states ratifying the AU protocol on social protection and social security and depositing the ratification instruments with the chairperson of the AU Commission. Member states will be obligated to have social protection programs that address poverty and vulnerability. So let us take it up upon ourselves to be able to encourage our governments to sign and ratify the Heyi Protocol on social protection and social security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyrilla. Thank you for this call to all of us. I think this is really a call we should take seriously because there's an enormous potential. And as GCAP, we actually decided that we will work on the protocol in the several countries. We are active in 22 countries in Africa. So the other important question, which often is raised, and rightly so, how to finance social protection. And especially at the moment where the debt crisis is again so strongly affecting many countries in Africa, but also in other regions. This question is even raised more strongly, and unfortunately, it is often used as an argument against social protection that we cannot allow, but of course we need to have the right answers. So I'm happy we have Umberto Cattaneo here online. He is a public finance economist at the International Labour Organization in the Universal Social Protection Department. So it's really great that you are here because your work on financing and fiscal space is really a central one, and the ILO is the leading UN organization working on social protection, and the ILO is doing great work, and actually there's also really good cooperation with civil society, which is very much appreciated. So how that works now, probably you will shift the camera. Thank you for being here with us, Umberto.
Thank you. So shall I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this side event on social protection. And I'm sorry I cannot be there in the room. I was 2 weeks ago in New York in the Financing for Development Forum. And some of you, I don't know, I cannot see well people in the room. I don't know if some of you were there, but we already presented some of the information that I'm going to present here. So I have, as Ingo has said, I mean, we have noticed that social protection, and most of you already know, is only tangentially mentioned in the Pact for the Future. So it's only mentioned in paragraph 105, and it's only about rights of young persons and children, including girls and young women. But please, let me start by saying that social security and social protection floors are much more than that. I mean, they are for sure a crucial instrument to improve the livelihoods and the work life of the youth, but they are more. The ILO over the past decades has built a solid evidence-based that demonstrates that social protection eradicates poverty, reduces inequality, improves access to nutrition, education, health services, and it's also a way to increase productivity of firms and improve labor market participation, and also increase the overall aggregate demand. It is crucial, and we have heard that from Jane at the beginning, that social protection is harnessed to fight the ongoing climate crisis. Social protection can really be the pivotal instrument to address the adverse consequences of climate change and to support the much needed climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. At the ILO, Universal Social Protection Department, we think that investing in social protection is not only beneficial for SDG 1, where social protection is actually enshrined, but to achieve all the SDGs across social, economic, and environmental dimensions. Let me start with my presentation. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So today I'm here to show you how much it costs to have such universal social protection that I've been mentioning in my introduction. This was a working paper that has been launched in the Financing for Development Forum in New York. And I will, given the time constraint, I will give you a very brief presentation of the paper. We'll look at the methodology, at the results, and as Ingo was actually mentioning, at the strategies to close the financing gap and expand the fiscal space for social protection. So the methodology. So this new edition of the financing gap, there were previous 3 editions of the financing gap, is actually separating the financing gap between financing gap for the 5 social protection income guarantees, that is for children, persons with disabilities, maternity, older persons, and the unemployed, and the financing gap for essential healthcare. The financing gap for the 5 social protection income guarantees is actually the cost of covering those who are not currently receiving any social protection benefit for their condition. For example, it's the cost of covering all children aged 0 to 14 that are actually not receiving any social protection benefits. All the mothers of newborns that have given birth, but they have a very small child and they are not receiving any benefit. This is what it is, the financing gap for the 5 social protection income guarantees. The financing gap for essential healthcare is actually the cost of universalizing essential healthcare. And this was calculated together with the World Health Organization. And the methodology was published in the most notable journal, The Lancet. So here are some results. So across all low and middle income countries, we will need an additional 3.3% of GDP to ensure universal social protection coverage. 2% will be needed for essential healthcare, and the remaining 1.3% will be distributed among maternity, unemployment, disability, old age, and child benefits. As you can see, there is a lot of variability across national income groups and across regions. Across regions, Africa displays the largest financing gap, with 11.4% needed for essential healthcare, and the remaining portion needed for the 5 social protection benefits. What is the innovation of this new financing gap exercise? The innovation is that the data are available at the country level and that the data are available at the contingency level. Let me show you the next table to have a better overview of what I'm saying. So as you can see here, we have our 3.3% of GDP that can be disaggregated as the 2% for essential healthcare and 1.3% for the 5 income guarantees. But this 1.3 can further be drilled down, and we can see the amount that are needed for children, disability, maternity, old age, and unemployment. Why this is important? Well, we all know that when we go in a given country, as these data are available for each country, for all African countries, for all low and middle income countries, it's difficult that there is the political will to close the financing gap in social protection all at once in all these guarantees. But it's probably possible that the government has the political will to close the financing gap in one of these 5 important guarantees or in essential healthcare. And therefore, it's there that when we have this number that can be used really to prompt the national dialogue and to start up more in-depth costing exercise. Of course, this number does not replace national efforts to calculate the financing gap based on national circumstances. It's a starting point, and this is how this exercise should be seen. Now, for the finance, we made a huge effort to calculate the financing gap by sex. It is very important because there are very much gender differences in social protection coverage. But due to data limitation, we could only disaggregate the financing gap by sex for those who are in old age. And we have found that 2/3 of the financing gap to assure universal coverage for social protection for persons in old age would be allocated to paying benefits to women. And this is evidenced here. This is due to the fact that women spends a disproportionate amount of time doing unpaid care work at the expense of time spent in paid work, and also that women are overrepresented in low-paid jobs with poor working conditions, and this limits their capacity to contribute to contributory pension systems. Let's now see this table, which is very important. And in this table, you have the three numbers that you should remember from this presentation. So you have the financing gap as a percentage of GDP, which is 3.3%. You have the financing gap as a percentage of government expenditure, which is 10.6% across low and middle income countries, and the financing gap as a percentage of social protection expenditure, which is 31.6%. Why I'm saying that these three numbers are important? Well, I'm saying that because with these three numbers, we can really start to see the country capacities to close the financing gap. Because GDP, we know it's a theoretical indicator, but when we go down to general government expenditure or social protection expenditure, these are much more concrete variables. And assessing the financing gap as a percentage of them, it's really a way to see what is the capacity of the countries. As you can see, in low-income countries, the financing gap is 52.3% of GDP. So it is very difficult that this country will be able to close the financing gap using domestic resource mobilization. We have calculated that official development assistance directed towards low-income countries will need to be tripled to close the current financing gap of 52.3% of their GDP. Here, I'm starting with some strategies to close the financing gap. We think that in most countries, the most common strategies to close the financing gap will be domestic resource mobilization. This includes increasing tax revenues, of course, through progressive taxes, but also through wealth taxes and voluntary tax compliance programs. Regarding wealth taxes, there are debates currently in the G20 for the introduction of a 2% wealth tax on the ultra-billionaire. And Brazil was the government where the G20 is hosted this year that is putting forward this argument. Then, closing the financing gap would also mean to divert some revenues from carbon pricing into social protection, and also to remove some fuel subsidies progressively and use these revenues for social protection. We have estimated that if the existing fuel subsidy will be removed, actually this would free up 10.9% of GDP in low and middle income countries. This would more than close the financing gap of 3.3% of GDP. Of course, this would be an option for some countries because, as you can see, in low-income countries, the financing gap is so high and the emissions are low, and therefore this will not be an option for these countries. But for other countries, for example, we can see that this could be a viable option. There are other strategies to close the financing gap. For example, extending social security finance by increasing contributory revenues. The ILO has a series of international labor standards that can guide this process. The first is Convention 102, is the Social Security Minimum Standard Convention, which is open to ratification and provides guidance regarding how to create the fiscal space for social protection. Other recommendations, such as Recommendation 202 and Recommendation 204 on the transition from the informal to the formal economy, provides some guidance on how to close the financing gap. And one of the main measures that is prevalent across most ILO standards is the simplification of payment of tax and social security contribution. This is already a reality in most Latin American countries, but also in African countries. For example, in Congo DRC, there is a monotax system that is actually simplifying the collection of taxes for small and medium enterprises, which employ the largest majority of people in sub-Saharan Africa, and in Congo DRC in this case, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. Other strategies to expand contributory revenues to social protection includes actuarial evaluation. So the ILO is actually doing actuarial evaluations to see that and to ensure that benefits are available when they are due, and to expand the fiscal space through these calculations. Other additional fiscal space options that go beyond the contributory revenues include the elimination of illicit financial flows and the restructuring of sovereign debt. We have seen and we have heard that today. So I'm just giving you this number. There are some countries that spend more on interest rate payments than on social protection. So this needs to end, and we really need to renegotiate this interest rate. Major central banks are now considering these days to reduce interest rates. So this is a good moment to restructure sovereign debt and reinvest some of the saving into social protection. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Over to Ingo. Thank you. I'm sorry, I cannot hear. You might be muted because I cannot hear.
Better now? Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay. Okay, I think it's a really important working paper, and we should read carefully. I also have some questions, but let's go first to the room here. Maybe there's already the first question. There's a second question. That's good. We have about 20 minutes left now. Let's start with some questions, but then also do some thinking how we can bring this into the CSO conference. But maybe first some general questions. The two gentlemen here in the front. You were the first, so the mic was there. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell your name and background?
Yeah, my name is Musa Omar. I'm the president and founder of Somali Help Age Association, and we are a member of the stakeholder group of aging and Global Assembly of the Older Persons, and we are very appreciative for the the social protection for the children, and what we have seen here is very amazing, and we just would like to emphasize something, how we can harmonize for the social protection or rights of the older persons and the children, and also for to make the policy as a general, so that they can benefit all of us, so like as intergenerational policies that we can, and as you mentioned, and the Back to the Future and the Future First and all those kind of documents, there are something that left behind, and we do see when we go through all this, and we do realize that some articles for the children are missing one another and the older person and the others. So how we can harmonize all those kind of documents so that we can make included and every single of every part of the communities, like the older persons, the children, all those 5 groups that the Umberto has mentioned it earlier, how we can all the people benefit without excluding every single part of the society. That's one of the things. The other question is that, and how we can access the report of the Umberto has mentioned right now for the financing gaps. Is there any link that we can go through so that we can, incorporate for our country, specifically in Somalia, that number of people and how they get affected? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, please here.
Thank you so much. My name is Titus Aburo. I work with an older persons organization called Aging Concern Foundation. I work there as the executive director. I have 2 questions. One to the lady who presented on social protection. I hope it's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. It's disheartening to hear that only 2 countries have ratified the protocol, and one of them being Nigeria, that is currently being ruled by the army, which is not very democratic. It's very disheartening. The question is, what is the level of mobilization that you're doing for civil society organizations to support this ratification process? I will give you an example. I was at the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development recently in Addis Ababa, and we had a session with our ambassador, where we presented some of the things we would like him to support us with. And I had no clue about this protocol completely. And that would have been an opportunity to lobby him, to talk to the government of Ethiopia to consider ratifying the protocol. So what is the level of mobilization to build momentum with civil society organizations? And for those CSOs who would be willing to be part of your network, how can they join? The last question is not a question rather, but a comment to Umberto. The strategies that have been presented on filling the financing gap, are they country specific? Looking at the case of Kenya, there's two strategies, the one on increasing tax revenues and also increasing the contributory schemes have already been implemented, yet social protection is still way, way below. I work with older people, I see the demand for social protection, how much is needed, it is not sufficient, yet we have already implemented some of these strategies. So are these strategies country specific? Are they, I mean, who are they going to apply to? Because some countries are already doing them, yet there is no impact that you can document. Thank you.
Okay, so we have two more questions in the room and we have two online. So in terms of gender balance, I wanted to give first to the lady and afterwards to Aristide.
Thank you so much. My name is Lucy Muriel from Kenya, and I am the CEO and founder of the Kenya Pro-Aging organization. Maybe you'll be like, all the Kenyan people are talking about the older persons because we feel they have been left behind. And actually from the statistics here, you can see it's more affecting the African countries more than the others. My question was to Cyrilla, because you're talking more about the protocol, which we are hearing for the first time. And again, it is unfortunate, like all the efforts you're making or the AU is making, and yet it's only 2 countries and we are the mostly affected. So in the protocol, is it just about children, youth, or the older people are included? Because like now we present the older persons organization, when we are pushing our governments, I actually push for policies and coming up with like the articles in parliament to be passed on that. Most of these countries, we do not even have policies touching on older persons. Mostly we've been concentrating on those younger people, youth, children, people living with disability, women. But now we forget, after 60 years, you're considered the older person. What happens to these people? So thank you so much for that initiative. And like my colleague there said, this is something we really want to be part of, especially when it touches the older person. Thank you, Cyrilla. Thank you so much.
Thank you, that's good. We get the older persons mentioned several times, and also it seems the African protocol gets a lot of attention. That's also good. We will further collect the questions and then have a round of answers here. Yeah, Aristide, vous parlez en français, je crois. Marine, est-ce que vous pouvez traduire, c'est possible? Oui. Ok, très bien.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Je m'appelle Aristide Wilonjamwili. So, thank you. I am Aristide. Je viens de la République démocratique du Congo. And I come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Et le sujet de cet atelier est capital. The subject of this workshop is a capital one. Néanmoins, le problème de la langue a fait défaut pour que nous puissions également y être impliqués convenablement. And unluckily, there was a problem of language, but anyway, we are in. Cela étant, nous demanderions qu'à de telles rencontres de grande importance, yeah, it has importance, the theme has an importance, que les organisateurs puissent songer aux aspects d'interprétation pour que tous les invités puissent suivre le contenu de l'atelier. Yeah, and it's good that the speakers had the importance of what is happening, and all participants have been following. Ok, ainsi je n'aurai pas beaucoup à dire, étant donné que je n'ai pas suivi avec attention tous les contenus du message de l'atelier. However, I don't have much to say because I didn't get the inputs of all that has been spoken anyway. Néanmoins, à ce qui concerne la protection sociale, concerning the social protection, nous au Congo, c'est encore un rêve pratiquement qui n'a pas encore de la place qu'il faut. In Congo, it's still a dream and which doesn't have its place right now. Pour ne pas prendre beaucoup de temps, nous ne pouvons demander aux organisateurs de cet atelier de préparer une documentation qu'il faut. Ils peuvent également nous transmettre en langue française pour que nous puissions exploiter rationnellement tout ce qui a été dit dans cet atelier. And not to lose time right now, I'm just asking all the organizers to prepare the contents maybe in French so that at least we know what's going on around. C'est vraiment à ce titre-là, si cela est possible, les différents responsables que j'ai vu intervenir, s'ils peuvent nous donner leurs adresses mail respectives pour que le moment venu, après que nous ayons exploité les documents qui nous seront transmis, nous puissions leur faire notre feedback. So I'm thankful and I'm grateful if the contents will be given to us in French and then we can have our inputs. Merci beaucoup, je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup et désolé encore par rapport à la traduction. So I'm sorry that we don't have translation or interpretation, but we will make sure in future events and also see which of the documents they are in French. Maybe you can answer. We have 3 hands raised online. Yeah, I think we are doing fine, but if you can keep it to 1 minute, it would be fine. The first person is Leo Atakpu, if I pronounce it right. So yeah. Can you speak? Maybe we will unmute you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, moderator. I think in the presentation, Umberto, you did talk about the need to triple ODA, to meet financing gaps. And I'm just wondering how will that be possible, because the 0.7 commitment, have not been achieved, rather we see that more resources are being channeled to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and then even what is happening around the Palestine. Much even before then, there has been this difficulty in getting OECD DAC countries to meet the 0.7 commitment. Second point, you did talk about domestic resource mobilization, and you did make reference to the removal of fuel subsidy progressively, to use the proceeds from such to finance social protection. I work for an organization called African Network for Environment and Economic Justice here in Nigeria. And part of what we are doing is also monitor government expenditure. Nigeria, the government has removed fuel subsidy way that's not progressive. And that has also pushed many more people now into poverty and difficult situations. So I don't know how, what remedy you think help assuage the situation on ground here in Nigeria. Lastly, you talked about eliminating illicit financial flows. I don't know, how best do you think that can happen? Because Nigeria is one country that is suffering serious financial hemorrhage as a result of illicit financial flow from politically exposed persons. I thank you.
Okay, important questions and many, so probably we will not answer all, but Umberto will do his best. We have Irene or Irene among Lutz, so who's the next?
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. My comments are on the child tracker. I wanted to ask about intersectionality, particularly how the tracker will be tracing poverty issues and access to social protection by children with disabilities, children in conflict, children in child labor, and other intersectionalities. And then the other issue is how do we guard against the trap of looking at social protection numbers and, you know, percentages of children accessing social protection at the detriment of other child poverty indicators like stunting, you know. If, for instance, you look at the statistics of children accessing social protection in South Africa, the story doesn't line up well with the stunting levels. You know, stunting levels of children in South Africa are quite high, even by African standards. So how do we avoid the risk of just, you know, tracking good social protection numbers and losing sight of other, you know, dimensions of poverty that children might be experiencing in the region? Thank you.
Thank you. So just to say, afterwards, I will ask the presenters also to answer in the reverse order. So we will start with Umberto. Now the last one that is from Ghislaine Saison, if I can fully read the name. Can you speak?
Yes, thank you. I just online, and I would like to thank you very much about your presentation. As the former participant request, it will be good also to have interpretation in French to help us to have a larger audiences, because what we are saying is really important. And the role of social protection, you know that in many countries in West Africa now, we are facing a conflict, and we are observing a destruction of all of the former program mechanisms who are putting down to extend universal social protection. So we also need this part of participant to understand what it is the key issues now for us to have our commitment. So I just want to emphasize the fact that the conflict today are destroying all of the things that we are doing, like social partners as people who are committed for the extension of universal social protection. Yes, it is essential, but we also looking at how so far UN can also enhance our capacity to strengthen our capacity to explain and also to make an awareness that our population can understand the need of universal social protection and use the tools like social dialogue to request our government to invest in the real social protection key mechanism for us. Secondly, I also want that today we look at UN and the other constituents of UN to engage our government really, because we are telling about many things, but we also need to now facing the action that we need to take. It is more than 10 years that we are talking about universal social protection issues, that we are talking about these issues, but now we need to orientate our discussion in the how this government can finance this universal social protection, mobilize resources, endogenous resources, to really develop with social protection that we now know that it is a key of the development. How can we encourage our government, how civil society people, NGOs, constituents can also have access to the means who can help them to become a constructive strength of proposition in the universal social protection challenges. So that is what I want also the presenter to help us to have, and to commit UN to give us the means that we as civil society, a constituent as ILO and UN, to have these means to help our government to promote inclusive development, peace and security.
Thank you.
Finally,
thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we got your important point. As we are supposed to end in 2 minutes, and maybe we can continue 3-4 minutes more, I guess, but we also need to leave because plenary will start at 2:45, and actually the plenary, there will be 2 plenaries this afternoon. There will be about these chapters, the 5 chapters of the Pact for the Future, and there, I don't know how they will do it with so many people, but there is at least opportunity to raise issues. And I really would like to have 2 or 3 volunteers here to say I will raise this issue in the plenary. This is one way. The other way is there are rapporteurs.
We get the links for the financing gaps.
Yes, probably Umberto, you can post the link in the chat. I don't know whether you've done already, but as you're not online, I think it is a working paper 113, if I remember right.
It's online. I'm gonna put the link, but I'm not sure it's gonna reach everyone. I just sent it.
So I think if you Google it with the even I found it under ILO financing gaps for social protection. I think
it's under working papers. So it's so it's online. Or you can go to socialprotection.org, which is our platform for social protection, and there is the paper. Yes, or in the ILO website under working papers.
That's already one important part, but let me say there are rapporteurs for these 5 chapters. One is Robi Halim from the Indigenous Major Group, and she's collecting inputs for chapter 1 on sustainable development and financing for development. Then there's also the chapter 5, for example, there's Andreas Brummel, that might be relevant for the whole financial architecture question space. So we can also bring it to him. Do we have any volunteers who want to raise this social protection in the plenary? Yes, David, one. For me, good, great. Somebody else? I think it's good if more people try, then maybe at least one will succeed. Okay, so we are almost at the end, but I think it will be good to get some short answers. So Umberto, if you can choose some key points, maybe 1 minute.
Sure. Okay, I'll do 1 minute. Sure. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Ingo. So we have heard about the strategies. One question was, are these strategies country specific? These strategies are general strategies, but when we go to the country level, we use these strategies as a roadmap to develop country-specific strategies. So we do what is called fiscal space analysis for social protection in countries, and we look at each country, the resources, how social protection is financed, not only the contributory part, because we know that in African country settings, most often a large part of the economy is informal, so the contributory part of social protection is lower than the non-contributory part. So we look at all the sources of finance, and then we develop a realistic way of increasing this finance. This is one way. So these strategies, of course, in this setting, like more global, are presented like that, but at the country level, they are very much defined. Then there was a question about the removal of fossil fuel subsidies. Well, this is it should not be removed all at the sudden. It should be removed progressively, as you said. This is something that it will be much more explored in the forthcoming World Social Protection Report on social protection for just transition. It's only on climate, the next World Social Protection Report, and there will be much more on that. And then what else to say? I mean, I think I'm running out of time. Just one last thing on children. The strategy of C102 is to have social protection over the life course. So the Convention 102 on Social Security Minimum Standard can provide some answers on that. Sorry.
Maybe. You covered quite a lot, thank you. And I think people can go into the documents. Yes, thank you. And then Cyrilla, please.
Thank you, colleagues, for the questions that you have asked. I'll respond very fast. Just to clarify that the two countries, Niger and Sao Tome and Principe, have not ratified the protocol, but they have just signed. So we have 0 countries that have ratified the protocol. Number 2, somebody asked about the level of mobilization. Now, in each and every country that APSP is represented, we have a platform. For example, here in Kenya, we have the Social Protection Actors Forum. So we invite you, those of us who are from Kenya, to join that platform for you to be able to participate in some of these activities, Social Protection Actors Forum. So how are we mobilizing? Apart from using the platforms, we go to the different countries. For example, we have been popularizing the Heyi Protocol on Social Protection and Social Security. We have been doing it in Zimbabwe. We have been doing it in Lesotho. Kenya, we did it some time back. In Uganda, Mozambique, Togo, Ghana, and Rwanda. So we are in the process of still popularizing the social protection, the protocol on social protection and social security. In Addis Ababa, we had last year in November, we had sensitization on the same popularization of the Heyi protocol on social protection and social security with the CSO forum. The CSO forum met there in November, and we had an opportunity to present the protocol. And so the organizations that were represented there, we believe that they are carrying on the same information to their various countries, because the CSO forum had representation from all over Africa. And lastly, yes, the protocol covers the older persons. Article 10 of the protocol covers the older persons. So older persons are taken care of. Thank you.
Very good. So now, David, please.
Yes, I'll answer a very important question that Irene raised. The point about the need to disaggregate the data that's available in the on the child benefits tracker. We do. If you go on the main page, we try to talk about social protection for people with disabilities. But I think this is also a very important part of the agenda. So I co-chair the Global Coalition to End Child Poverty, and tracking child poverty is one of the objectives of the coalition. And we've actually have some guidance about this. So I think we need to have more conversations about this. The data that's on the track, and I think there was someone else who asked about the data and the sources. It's from the ILO, that's the social protection data on coverage and financing, but there's also data on child poverty from UNICEF, from the World Bank and Oxford Poverty Initiative, I think. So there is a methodology page which outlines where the data is from, but the point about disaggregating data is very important. So we share what's available, and I think the point of whether reporting on social protection coverage and not linking it to, for example, stunting is a very important point. And we can actually have some of these conversations on the community page. But I also want to say that we also have another tool, the Child Atlas. It does talk about different dimensions on child indicators. So maybe what we need to do is to bring these two conversations together, and I'm glad that we work with Oliver Fiala, who manages this and is our data crunch on the child benefits tracker. We're also talking to other colleagues, ILO, UNICEF, and the World Bank as part of this partnership. So yes, thank you for flagging it, and we will make sure that in the next iteration of the tracker, it's a live project, it's just started in February, that's when we launched, and whatever support there is, including from academics like yourselves, Irene, we'll appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have the last, Jane, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know there were no questions for me, but what I want to say is that actors in the room, I'm so happy that we have heard about the African protocol. We all interact with our governments at different levels. We all interact with our politicians. Let's make this real. And as she mentioned before, we all need social protection. We cannot take it for granted. It's something that should form the basis of our conversations. Whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're what, you know, young people, if you don't plan today, you're going to be old tomorrow. And even if you're still young, you still need your own, you need
encouraging our governments to sign and ratify the protocol because they adopted it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's already adapted by the heads of states. So similarly, like the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs are also agreed by the governments, and that's always the good point to hold them accountable. So I think we have actually a historic opportunity in this workshop, made me more optimistic in this sense. Maybe the Summit of the Future and the Pact for the Future, that is, their social protection is not yet very strong. Hopefully it can be strengthened, but definitely the whole discussion on financing for development with the summit, that conference for next year in June 25, and then the World Social Summit in September 25. These are all opportunities, and I think we can and we must be together as civil society to have a strong point here. And I think the great work done by so many here, and also by ILO, we should be really work together to have a strong demand and a strong voice. And I really hope I mean, the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors is definitely one very important platform where we come together. So I really hope we can mobilize and do strong advocacy together. And I believe this workshop actually was one step in this direction. So thank you to all who spoke, but also for all the presentations, but also for all participants online and here in the room, and also for the technical work. Thanks a lot. I think we will go straight to the bus to go to the plenary. That's right, yeah? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
statement.